Am I the a-hole for taking my family to court over a business they tried to steal from me? I'm Alex, 35, and I've been running a small but successful family-owned business for the last 10 years. It started off as a small local cafe that I inherited from my late uncle. He left me the business in his will, along with a small plot of land that he owned next door. I've worked my butt off to grow the cafe, turning it into a thriving business. Over the years, I've expanded, brought in more staff, and even started a small catering arm. It's been my life's work, and I've put everything I have into making it successful. Throughout this time, I've had the support of my parents, who have always been somewhat involved in the business. They never ran it, but they helped with some of the early stages, funding a few renovations and giving advice when asked. They were proud of what I had built, and for the most part, things were good. Or so I thought. A few months ago, I started to notice something strange. My parents, specifically my dad, started showing up at the cafe more often, and I figured it was just because they were proud of the business. But then, my dad began making comments about how I should retire early and let the family take over, and how the cafe was doing great now, so I could step back. I laughed it off at first, thinking it was just his way of trying to be supportive. But then he brought it up again, and again. It became clear that he and my mom were seriously talking about taking over. I confronted them about it, and that's when things started to unravel. My dad told me that they had been thinking it through and that they believed it was time for me to pass the torch. When I asked why, he said that they had more experience managing businesses and that I was too emotionally attached to run it the way it should be run. I was taken aback. I had been running this cafe for years, building it from the ground up. My parents had no real involvement in the day-to-day operations. So why were they suddenly acting like they had the right to take over? At first, I tried to reason with them. I told them that I wasn't ready to step down and that I had big plans for the business. I had no intention of passing the torch to anyone, let alone to them. But their response was nothing short of shocking. My dad said that they were entitled to the business because they had been the ones to help me get started, and that they were just trying to help me make a smooth transition into something more relaxing. When I pushed back, they turned hostile. They started talking about how families should work together, and how it's only fair that they take over because they had invested money into the cafe years ago, which was, admittedly, a small loan. Then, things got even more heated when I discovered that they had contacted a lawyer to help them take ownership of the business. They told me that they were legally entitled to a larger stake in the business due to their contribution over the years. They even went so far as to claim that I couldn't run the business without their support, and that the cafe's success was as much about their advice as my hard work. I was floored. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were essentially trying to steal my business from me, and they had the audacity to call it helping me. It became clear that they thought they were entitled to my cafe, despite the fact that they had never run it or invested anything other than a small loan. I had built this business from the ground up, and they wanted to take it from me like it was theirs to take. I tried to settle things amicably, but they refused to back down. So, after exhausting all other options and being pushed to my breaking point, I made the decision to take them to court. I knew it was going to be messy, but I had no choice. I couldn't let them get away with this. The court case was long and stressful, and honestly, it felt like my entire family turned against me. My parents and some extended family members sided with my parents, saying that I was being unreasonable and that I was ruining the family dynamic by refusing to let them take over. They even told me that I was being selfish for not wanting to share the business with them. In the end, the court ruled in my favor, confirming that the cafe and business rightfully belonged to me, as it had been left to me by my uncle and I had built it into what it was today. The judge also found that my parents' claims of entitlement to the business were without merit. But the damage was done. My relationship with my parents is completely shattered. They refuse to talk to me now, and the rest of my family is divided. I'm emotionally drained, and I feel like I've lost everything. I've kept the business, but I've lost my family in the process. They're accusing me of being too prideful and too focused on money, and they don't understand why I couldn't just share the business with them. They say that I'm ruining the family legacy over something that could have been handled privately. Am I the a-hole for taking my family to court over a business they tried to steal from me?